So how are you?
I'm good. I'm very happy to be in a gap between the children's Tring. You're in Wales now, so
Yes.
but I suppose we are all together in one way or another. So it's no issue.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really
Just
fun.
the prize givings at my son's school to a cameraman, is a bit sad, but rushed home here.
Oh, well, I have done a little bit of a research. You've had a pretty impressive career so far. According to the Irish Times, you've sold over 25 million books now in over 40 languages, which is pretty
Hard,
impressive.
yeah, it's a hard number to wrap your head around. So I try not to think about that, especially when I'm writing a book. I don't think, should I write it differently now than I used to write it when I had 4 people who read my books. I just kind of still write for those 4 people, and
Mm.
it's usually me, my wife, and then 2 imaginary young people.
So
I have the same. I've always had the same. I haven't really changed how I write books, so I think that helps me quite a lot.
So how many books have you written? I've found at least over 40.
Yeah, that's as close as I can get because I can never stay on topic. So it's easy when you're counting the Artemis books because you go 8 Artemis books. But when I get up over 40, then you start getting into adaptations and graphic novels and stuff like that. So I think it's around 43. I'd like to get to 50 if I could manage that, Tabitha. I think that would be a nice shelf.
Nice round number.
And see, this is the only place I'm allowed to kind of have all my books lined up. It's in my office, and it's watched over by the fantastic David Bowie and Freddie Mercury dolls.
Oh, very good.
Heroes. So I'm trying to get a Kate Bush version, but I don't think they do one of those.
all good choices. All good choices. So I've actually just finished reading your new book, The Denial Charges Fowl Twins.
Yeah.
I believe is the second in the series.
It is, yeah.
Which I very much enjoyed. Oh, you've got one there too. Very much enjoyed some of the little references as well, like Elton John and things like that. Definitely enjoyed that.
Yeah, those are all in. I always think that somewhere there's a mom or dad who are reading this with their child for a bedtime story, or just listen to it as an audiobook. And there's no reason that adults shouldn't be entertained also. So I usually put in a lot of references for adults, and you can actually, I like to think you can read it like you watch The Simpsons. So you can sit down with your son and watch The Simpsons, or even our movies like The Incredibles, for example. And everybody gets something out of it, and that's kind of, well, you're not going to get any deep philosophy, but you got a lot of poopy jokes and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so there's something for everyone, I think.
But still very entertaining though. I was wondering, kind of like as a first thing, kind of to get the ball rolling. For those who probably haven't started reading the Fowl Twins yet, or obviously haven't got their hands on the new book yet, can you kind of tell us a bit about the Fowl Twins series without giving too much away?
Yeah, when I was finishing up the Artemis Fowl series, which is the one most people know, Artemis is like a criminal mastermind kid from Ireland. So when I finished up Artemis, I thought, oh, I'm done with that. It's been like 15 years in Leprechaun world. And that was about 7 years ago. But after about 5 years, I came back around to going back into this Leprechaun world. But I didn't want to do Artemis again because his character was finished. So I did his little brothers, and there they are. So that's Myles. He's the genius one. And then that's Beckett. But he's also kind of a genius, but he's like a savant physically, in that he's really good at anything athletic or combat. He's very good there. There's Maddie. And so they have got these, when in the last Artemis Fowl book, they were both possessed by dead fairy ghosts. And fairies left them, but they left them with a little sparkle of magic. And so Beckett is able to speak any language, including animal language. And Myles has this massive, massive intellect, and he thinks Artemis is a complete idiot, and he's the true genius. So between the two of them, they get in touch with the fairies, and they embark on a series of adventures. And in this adventure, they linked up with the famous seven dwarves, who are not as cheery as we thought they would be. And they try to steal a big cache of irradiated gold from the kind of the FBI or the CIA. And along the way, then there's all sorts of mad escapades and explosions and jokes and funny characters. And yeah, so I think it's good fun. And especially around now when things are quite serious around the world, it might be nice for you 20 minutes before bed every night to read a chapter and just have a laugh and go to bed smiling rather than going to bed worrying.
Yeah, definitely. So what's it been like kind of returning to the Fowl universe? Is it kind of comforting, or is it a bit strange to come back?
It is great. I was a bit wary about going back. So I had been saying for years that I would do a Fowl Twins book, and publishers and my agent kept saying, when are you going to do this book? And I was doing everything except that book. I had done some plays, musicals. I had done a book about a dragon. I had done all sorts. But eventually I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just write the first chapter and I'll see how I feel if I'm enjoying it. And as soon as I started to write, I thought, wow, this is so much fun. I'd forgotten how much fun these books were. And I think sometimes when you reach, the last third of your career, you have this desire to move on and do different things. But then if you wait a few years, you realize, you know what, that stuff I did for 20 years, that was, I really enjoyed that, and people really like it. So let's do a bit more. So I'm going to do, I think, 3 of these. I'm working on number 3 at the moment. But then I said Artemis would only be 3, and it ended up being 8. So who knows? But
so maybe we can expect more. Who knows?
Who knows? I'm not a great planner. I know J.K. Rowling famously had the last chapter of Harry Potter, written years beforehand, and she had the whole thing planned out. But I wish I had that kind of focus, but I don't. As you can tell from talking to me, I just kind of go off.
No, don't be silly. So when you're writing a book and you're starting to kind of brainstorm, what's kind of your process? And then we've also got a little side question from Finn from Long Marston School, and I think he's in year 5. And he wants to know how long it then takes you to write a book.
Well, Finn, I suppose, first of all, if I'm writing a novel like this one, from beginning to end, it usually takes me about 8 months. But if I'm writing a picture book, that would be considerably shorter, even though the process then could take up to 2 years because the artist is filling them in. And then if I'm doing a graphic novel, I tend to do that maybe once every month. A chapter comes in and I work on the chapter in over 2 days and send it out. So that can take up to 4 years. The last one we did, which was called Illegal, that took like 4 years to do altogether. But my process, usually when I'm working on a book, so for example, now I'm working on book 3 of Artemis Fowl, the Fowl Twins. I have another window open on my screen, and this window will just be any little ideas that I have. I just fire them into that folder. And even though I'm not trying to put them together like a jigsaw, my subconscious is kind of putting the pieces together. And I usually find then by the time I finish this book that something has emerged here, like the bones of a story. And that's my very first step. And then I put up that new folder and I try to put an actual plan together. And that could take a long time, or it could come really quickly.
Okay.
And once I've got about a 3-page plan together, I start writing. And then I just see where it takes me.
Oh, well, sounds very good. And then following on from that, we've kind of got some similar like story writing questions. We've got one from Katie, also from Long Marston. And she wants to know if any of your characters are based on real people and how you choose the names and things like that.
Hi, Katie. Yes, that's a good question. A lot of the characters are based on real people, mostly my family. The twins, for example, are based on my own boys. I have 2 kids. They're not twins, but they are boys, and they're very, very different. And that's what I really liked about these characters, that they're really different, but they have this special bond. And my kids are like that. One is, he's quite organized. He likes to keep a low profile. And then the other guy is crazy. He's just bouncing off the walls all the time. But he's very effective. He's very funny. People really like him, and he gets a lot done in that way. So also before I had sons, I based all the characters on my own brothers. I have 4 brothers and my parents and anyone who knows me. If you know me, you're probably somewhere in the book, even if you don't realize it. And it's actually a good idea for young writers, not when they're writing a story, to try and imagine who the character might be like in their own lives. Otherwise, if you have 10 characters, sometimes it can happen that all the characters just slowly turn into you. So you've got 10 versions of you. And that's, I don't think anyone is fantastic enough, except possibly Robbie Williams, to have 10 versions of themselves. That they're all interesting. So if my advice is to maybe base it on your parents or your brothers and sisters.
Oh, that's good advice. So who do you think your favorite character is in the Fowl Twins series, and also why do you think that?
That's a tough one. I really like the characters. I always tend to go for the bad guys. I love bad guys, and some of my biggest influences have been from books with bad guys in them, like Peter Pan, for example. I think Captain Hook is a fantastic bad guys, or movies like 101 Dalmatians, Cruella de Vil. Even the name is fantastic, and I like that kind of name, like Cruella de Vil. So you know, Cruella the devil or Cruella who is evil. It's fantastic, and so I like to do little names like that. So Artemis Fowl, for example. Then the word Artemis is based on the Greek, the goddess of the hunt, Diana. So it means the hunter, and to fowl means, or fowl are winged creatures, fowl. So Artemis Fowl means the hunter of winged creatures. So which a joke that, you know, usually I only get, and that's fine because it's really just for me. But so I love doing little names like that, and it's really, it can be very interesting. And sometimes I put them in and nobody gets them, and then maybe 5 years later I will get an email, someone say, oh, I just got that joke about Dr. Efroydine slip, that's really good, and that really gives me a little smile. So I spend a huge amount of time on those for the return, which is minimal. I'm happy.
Well, that's all that matters, isn't it? So the next one we've got is from Isla, who's also from Long Marston, and she wants to know how long you've been writing and when did you start?
Well, Isla, I started quite early, although I didn't get published until I was 32. But I started young. I was writing stories from my first year in primary school, just little stories. Most people think that if you want to be a writer, that you have to write a book immediately, you know, age 7. And it doesn't really work like that. What you need to do is build up. So you start and you write a little paragraph story, and then maybe 2 years later, you start writing full page stories. And then a year later, you do 3 pages. And eventually, by the time you get to 17 or 18, you're ready to maybe do a full length story. And that's what I did. And I started writing full books. I think the first one when I was about 19 and I was still in college. But that never got published. I did try and get it published, but I didn't have any luck. And so my advice would be, don't give up. The reason most people don't get published is because they do one, it doesn't work for them, and they just think, well, I must be no good, and they just stop. Whereas in reality, it's very, very, very few people get published with their very first go. Now, it might be their first novel that they actually finished, but it will not be their first attempt at writing. So, you know, keep going. I had written 6 full books, and then the 7th one got published. So it does, and most writers, I know there's exceptions, obviously, but most writers have been through that.
Okay, that's interesting to know, and good advice for everyone watching. I'm fairly sure there's quite a lot of young writers probably watching as well.
I hope so. I hope so.
And then something slightly more specific to the actual like books. So the Madcap gadgets, how did you kind of come up with them, and what were like your favorite ones that you did?
I think I was inspired by my own youth. And when I was young, there was a great comic book in the UK called Warlord. And you could join the Warlord Club. And every week then you would get, it was like a little spy booklet of secret codes and gadgets and spy stuff. And I really loved that. And then I went on to really love all the James Bond movies and all the gadgets they had there. And so I thought it would be funny to give the fairies these gadgets. because in my mind, the only reason they would be still surviving is that they were very advanced technologically. So I try and make the gadgets sound like they might work. So I put a little bit of technology into them, into the description. And because to me, children are very inquisitive, or young people. And if something doesn't work, they kind of go, I don't believe that, that's rubbish. And they lose faith in the books. So you have to make it sound like, oh, he's put some thought into this. This could actually work if we don't examine it too closely. Yeah, so I do that. And my brother is an engineer, my brother Paul. So sometimes I will ring him and ask him to give me a hand with technology, which he does. I'm trying to think which one would be my favorite. I think the fairies all have these wings called double decks wings, which they can fly about with, they can strap on. So it's like the fairy version of a jetpack. And I think living in Dublin, and I know if you're in the UK, traffic is bad everywhere. I'm not sure about Wales. I don't know how it is in Wales, but I think it's pretty bad in Cardiff at least. So
busy. I'm in Cardiff. It's pretty busy.
Especially I think to make our commute a lot more pleasant.
Yeah, definitely. I could do with a pair of those. So which bit of the Deny Charges book do you think was kind of like the best bit to write?
There was I really enjoyed writing this. I wanted to try and make this book, you know, like the funniest book I could. So there's all sorts of mad stuff, like, you know, they're riding dolphins there on the back, and that might look pretty simple, but then when you go and read it, you see it's quite a funny little bit. So I think my favorite bit, and I can't talk too much about it because it's a bit rude, but there's a character called Whistleblower who is a little baby, a toy troll. So he looks like he's just an action figure. He's about 8 inches tall, and he's best friends with Beckett. But they are caught hanging out, and fairies and humans are not supposed to hang out, and so they have to separate. And Whistleblower is going back below ground, and Beckett is going back to the house, and they're very miserable. And before he goes, Whistleblower says, well, we gotta perform the parting ritual. And the parting ritual is quite disgusting because it's an old troll ritual where they stand back to back, and then I'd pass wind at each other so that their particles shall mingle, and they will be joined in that way forever. So I think the Native American Indians used to have it where they would cut their hands and join them, and their bloods would mingle. So we have wind brothers here, and I just thought that is so mad and it's so ridiculous, but it's also very, very, when you read it, I think it's possibly of all the passages, it's the single funniest passage. And I was even laughing myself, which is very bad form for a writer to laugh at their own stuff. But so if you want to find the parting ritual where they mingle the winds, I think you might enjoy that. Please do not try it at home with your brother. It's just fiction. It doesn't work. Well, it probably does work, actually. I have had complaints from parents who say, oh, thanks for the parting ritual. Now my 2 sons are up in our bedroom doing a parting ritual, and so it's a bit smelly in there. So don't do that.
And then obviously something very exciting that's happened this year as well is that the Artemis Fowl film has come out onto Disney Plus. So what was that kind of experience like, and how involved were you?
It was a lovely experience, and I think it was lovely because I wasn't really involved at all. So they just brought me in as like a guest to go on the set and to meet the actors. So it was absolutely lovely, and Kenneth Branagh was really sweet. And the only person I didn't meet was Dame Judi Dench, and I really would have liked to meet Dame Judi. But I met everybody else, and I met the cast and the crew and the designers and the costume makers, and it was lovely to be able to bring my family to this set and say, right guys, this is what the inside of my head looks like. I think they were really, you know, awestruck by the whole thing, because a Disney movie, it's a big deal. I didn't realize how big. So you go onto the set and it's like they took up a whole military base called Longcross. It was massive, and they built the fairy town, and they built Fowl Manor. So it was just incredible. And then I suppose we were looking forward, there was supposed to be a premiere in Leicester Square in London, and obviously with coronavirus that couldn't happen. So it was put onto Disney Plus, but it's been really successful and everyone's really happy with it and kids are really enjoying it. So yeah, it was a really positive experience for me.
Good. Well, I guess the most important thing, did you like it?
I did like it. I mean, it's from the book. So if you go expecting to see a carbon copy of the book, you might not be 100% happy, but I knew that was happening, so I wasn't expecting that. So I really liked it. And one of my favorite actors, Colin Farrell, was in there, and he big career. So yeah, I had a great time, and I love the music. They got a great guy to do the music, so it's really weird listening to the music from your own movie when you're writing. It's like it's meta or something. So it's been a nice. It's been a really nice experience.
Oh, I'm jealous. I work in TV and film, so jealous. It sounds cool. So last question for me before I think we open up to some of the other questions. What do you think is the most important element of good writing?
Wow, I think for a young writer, the most important element is perseverance, because it is through perseverance that everything happens. You have to write as much as you can. You have to observe as much as you can, and you have to read. And that is a lifelong thing. It's not, at no point am I ever going to say, well, that's me, John. I'm the best writer in the world. I'm now stopping learning. It's never going to happen. So if you want to be a writer, you have to accept that there's no shortcut. You know, I know some celebrity books get published and some of them are great. And that's kind of the only shortcut. But really, if you want to be a writer, you just have to sit down in front of your computer, maybe up to 8 hours a day. I was going to say 8 hours a week. That's not much. And just put in the hours. So I would say persevere, and be able to listen to criticism, but don't believe all of it. Because I will tell you, kids, in this world, about 40% of people know what they're talking about. So try to find the 40. That's my second title of the day. The first one came from moderator. What was it? The Last Ablution. That's gold. So yeah. So perseverance and judgment. I know that's two, but they would be the ones I'd recommend.
Great. No, that's brilliant. Really good advice. So I think Ben's popped back up.
Yeah.
Get some questions.
Can you both hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've got so many questions. Honestly, I had so many emails yesterday from so many different schools. So I'm going to try and spread out the schools so they all get.
Okay. I'll try and go quickly because I know I tend to waffle on, so I'll try and keep.
Well, as much as you like. So I had one from Grace in year 6. It didn't actually say which school it was. So let's just say that's all of the schools. How did you come up with the fairy language in Artemis Fowl?
That was it's not actually a language, it's really just a font, so because it translates directly. But that was my editor, Sarah, at the time, Sarah Hughes, and I was saying it was written into the story that the fairies had a language, and so she said, well, why don't we get an artist to design the font, and we can use it then as a code. And so initially it was just going to be as part of the story. It'd be nice to have it on the page. But then Sarah said, well, why don't we do another story? And we'll run it along the bottom. And if you want to decode that, it's an extra level for you. So yeah, I really have Sarah Hughes, my wonderful editor who did all the Artemis Fowl books, to thank for that one.
Brilliant. And Amelie from Cheddington asks, what was your favorite subject at school?
My favorite subject, Amelie, was art. I loved art, and initially my goal or my ambition was to be a comic book writer and artist, and for many years that was my goal. And I would, right up until I went to university, and in university I did an art class, and I realized how bad I was. Until that point, I thought I was a genius, and then I saw people who actually were good. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll just do art as a hobby and stick to the writing as my ambition. And luckily I did, because that that worked out for me. But I still draw out the characters, and I still enjoy art, and I love it when I get when I get pictures in of the new covers and it's like that good. It's fantastic. It's a real. I love art. Artists are like magicians.
How did you? So when you first saw that first book cover of Artemis Fowl, you obviously as an art lover, you must have looked at that with huge joy.
I couldn't believe it because it's so clever. It was just like they decided rather than do the usual illustrate something from the story, they had actually taken the book and just made it into a block of gold and with a code on it, so you could try and decode what was on the book. So it made it very mysterious, and it was one of the first books that used the shimmery, you can see it there, the shimmering golden foil, and that's everywhere now. But we were among the first to do that, and it was kind of an expensive thing to do. So the publishers really had faith in the book, and they really put some money behind it. And I really think the cover is one of the main reasons that book was such a success.
Brilliant. The next one, this is a bit of Ashmead and Ashlyns actually. Fraser asked, this is a very hard question to answer, but how many books have you read? Which is probably impossible to answer, but what's the best book you've ever read, or your favorite book?
That is a tough. Fraser's asked me really tough questions. I think I would have read thousands of books, not as many. I used to read like 3 a week, but now I read about 1 a fortnight, so I'm really slowing down. As for my favorite, that changes all the time.
Sorry, that's my cat.
As a cat.
Ignore.
I thought I was having a stroke. I don't know what was going on. I tend to keep my really favorite books out of my office, so I'm going to see if I can find one for you. And this is, I have one here. This is, I do not recommend this to the younger kids, but this is Clive Barker, and it's called Weave World, and it's a horror story, and it's just so immersive. And if you haven't read it, do. And why I'm so proud of this is because Clive, he was doing a reading. I wasn't at the reading, but I was doing a reading in the shop the following week, and someone told him, and he left this for me, and that's so kind. And apparently that is very like him, and he's a really nice guy. So, but also I'm such a huge fan, so this is my prized possession. I don't even read this one. I have another copy, so I just like to, I just like to keep it nice and pristine. So don't read that book yet.
Fantastic. Not until you're what age, do you think?
I think 17 at least, or at least ask maybe your dad or your mum to read the first chapter.
Fantastic. What helps you to write when you get stuck? Do you ever get writer's block?
Oh yeah, I get stuck all the time, and I have a few tactics which I'll share with you. First of all, I go back and edit what I did the previous few days, and I kind of read up to where I am, and usually by that point, some idea has struck me. If that doesn't work, I have my B project. So I'm always working at something that's completely different to what I am working on, and I will transfer over to that so the day is not wasted. But if my brain is totally plugged up, you can't force it. So I just sometimes I finish early, or other times I just go for a long walk. And I find exercise really gets the blood pumping in your brain. And that's why I love the new voice apps on the phone. So I'm walking along, and you can bring up your microphone and it will change it to speech to text. But it must be my accent, because whatever it changes into usually is totally wrong. But sometimes, funnily enough, the wrong stuff is actually not bad. You say, oh, that's not a bad idea. So it's kind of, it's like the Bob Dylan method of writing about leprechauns. But so I would advise you to 1, do your B project, 2, do your edits, 3, go for a walk.
Yes, that's a very good advice. Right, let's go to Carter at Ashmead, year 6. Why did you want to become an author? And was that a definitive decision in your life? I want to be an author, or was there, was it a series of things that happened?
Well, I think initially I just wanted to tell stories, and not even for anyone else. But it started off just doing them myself at home. And then I come from a different era of teachers and of school. But when I went to school, I don't know about you guys, like you, Tabitha, you're probably several months younger than me. So, or decades, I don't know. But we used to be, creative writing was considered really important when we went to school. And so that teachers would say, right, sit down, write a story. Like it has to be 4 pages long or 5 pages long. And most kids go, oh no, but I love that. And then afterwards, the teacher would say, right, who wants to read out their story? And of course, I would be like, yes. And it was a great way to get an audience. You could actually stand up and they would give you half an hour to read out your story, which I don't know if that happens so much anymore, but it was you really learned when the lads in the class, it was all boys in my class, liked the story because they would not throw things at you. And then when they didn't like it, they would throw things, mostly abuse. So I realized, wow, you can actually affect people with the words you have written down. And for a young fella, that's a momentous realization, that stuff that you took out of your head and you ran it through a pen onto a page, if you repeat that to someone, it has power. And you're like, oh my goodness, I have no power in any other part of my life except this. And it becomes quite intoxicating. And I didn't realize you could do it as a career until I was about 17. And then from then on, I said, right, if my alternatives are writing or getting a job, I am going to do the writing. And it took me a long time to get there. You know, it took 15 years or whatever, but it was worth it.
Wow. Okay. 15 years. Amazing. And over that period, when you were struggling, what were you doing for a living? What was the...
Yeah, I was a teacher. I taught, I suppose, middle grade, as it would be called in the States, or the 10 to 12-year-olds mostly. And I did that for 15 years. My wife is also a teacher, or was a teacher. We traveled around the world, and that was great. If you're a teacher, especially if you're a teaching couple, you are a valued commodity, and you'll get a job in any country in the world because they only have to give you one apartment. So they love having teaching couples. So we went to Saudi Arabia, we went to Africa, we went around Europe. We just had a brilliant 20s, or in our 20s, for about 5 years. And I learned so much about cultures and also about writing. So I really recommend it. If you fancy being a teacher and you want to see the world, then you need to marry a teacher. So just pick any teacher, it's fine.
Fantastic. Year 5 at Dundale, they ask, what author inspired you to start writing, or what were your favorite authors when you were growing up?
Well, there's an English writer called Clive King, and he wrote a seminal book called Stig of the Dump, which is one of my favorites. And I remember I was ill at home from school, and my mom went to the secondhand bookstore. My mom's a great mom, and she came home with something she knew I would like, which is a book. And the book was Stig of the Dump, with I can't remember the name of the illustrator, but a very famous Italian illustrator. Someone will probably text it in. And I read it about 3 times over the next few days, and it just transported me. And why I loved it was a little bit why I like Huck Finn, was that Barney, who's the protagonist, he was not cool. He was not tough. He was not a sports guy. He was like a normal guy like me. You know, I felt, oh my goodness, if I meet Barney, he would actually be my friend, which was amazing to me, that could be the hero of a book. So I knew then I was kind of hooked. And also there was the fantasy elements, and towards the end of the book, Stig and Barney go back to the Stone Age and they witness a Druid's writer. So, which is probably not the Stone Age, probably the Bronze Age. But the point is, it had everything I liked, kind of a hero who wasn't typical, a strange, unusual character from another time and fantasy time travel elements. So I think that was the book really that set me on the path, and I probably would have been 9 or 10 when I read that.
Lovely question from Tia, year 6 at Cheddington. That kind of opens up how long do you spend planning your writing? Are you a planner? Or I asked the same question to Anne Cleves, who writes Shetland and Vera. She doesn't plan at all. She just starts at the beginning and uncovers the story, and that astonished me. So are you a writer, just a doer, or a planner?
I'm a little bit of both. I do kind of a skeleton plan, and I think that the plan is a little bit like my safety net. Once I know I have it there, that it's possible for me to finish this story, then I go. So that the plan would be maybe a page or two. And I do that because too many times I've been convinced I had enough story to go. And then after about 20,000 words, I realized this is not going anywhere. It's terrible. And I just wasted the last, month or two. So I now do a little bit of a plan, but if I'm honest, the plan doesn't usually bear much resemblance to the finished product.
Fantastic. Let me have a look. More questions. What did you think? What did you think you were going to do when you were a child? Obviously, that's maybe you didn't realize that authoring was a thing in your first.
No, I didn't realize you could actually have a job as a writer, because I think when you're from a small town in Ireland, or maybe any kind of rural little town, you think authors are these far away, glamorous people, possibly in London or Monte Carlo, and they live fantastic lives on an estate, maybe with shotguns and dogs. And it's not really the kind of thing you can do if you're brought up in a little town. So, and that stays with you, even when you realize that it's ridiculous. You still feel a little bit inferior because you are not maybe as cool and glam as you think a writer should be. But then you realize, actually, it's the people who aren't cool and glam who make the best writers. So I think I realized, but not until I was about 17. And by that time but you also realize, then, I'm sorry to go back, but that most writers don't make a living. You can't just be a writer. So I was fully prepared to be a writer at night and a teacher during the day. And I really liked teaching. And I only quit teaching because I had to go on so many book tours that I hadn't got time to teach. So I decided I would give it up for a few years and see what happened. And that was about 21 years ago. So far, so good.
Lovely. So there's a little collection of questions from different people. Mrs. Whitehead, I couldn't tell you which school, that's obviously a school teacher. She's written, which book took the longest to write? And I've kind of, I'm packaging that together with Rachel, who asked, do you ever get frustrated when you're writing? And obviously that may extend the process of writing. And William goes to the nth degree saying, have you ever just had to restart a book?
Yeah. Well, Mrs. Whitehead, which is the hardest book? I wrote a book called Airman, and that was a book that I set in Victorian kind of UK and Ireland. And so I had to do a huge amount of research for that. And I really started to enjoy the research, which I was surprised by. So I spent as much time researching that era and the science of, it was all about the race to the first powered flying machine. So I had to learn all about that science. So that took quite a long time. And then I had to write the book, which was, I think, my biggest book. So the whole process took me about 1.5 years, which was definitely by far the longest book I've ever written. And then I do get frustrated, and it does get to a stage sometimes where the book is not going right. And that's when I started doing plans, because up to that point, very much like Anne Cleves, I just went for it. But now I always do a plan, and that is because a few times I've ended up going, this is not working. You try and make it work because you spend so much time at it, and you keep hammering it, and you change it until it's not recognizable. But eventually you just have to admit it, forget it. But one of the things I would say to young writers, if there's anyone out there, you do need to finish something. Very often people who are starting writing books, they keep jumping to another project because they think, oh, this is a better idea, or this is a better idea. But I would say at some point you've got to settle on your book and say, no matter what I think of, this is the book I'm doing now. I'm going to finish this book and I'm going to write the end at the end of it. And then I can go on to this other idea for part 2 or part 3 or whatever. But at some point you just need to commit and finish the book.
So unlike a Peter May, who seems to have unfinished manuscripts sort of rattling around in his filing cabinet, you don't have that many then?
I've got a few. I mean, I definitely have a few. Sometimes when I'm in between books or I'm going for my next chapter, or my next novel, I will have 2 or 3 things on the go, and I might have written 40 or 50 pages or 100 pages, and to see is that gonna be the project. And I usually know it's sometimes when I'm just about to go to sleep, I will catch myself thinking about one of my projects, and that's usually the one, because my subconscious knows already, and it's just up to my conscious mind to catch up. So if I wake up thinking about a book, or if I'm out walking and that's the book I'm thinking about, that's probably the one to do. But I do have a lot of openers ready to go, so I will go back to them between every project.
Nice. I'm conscious we've got we've got about a minute to go, so I'm going to give a final question just in case anything else comes from that. But what does Eoin Colfer do outside of writing? What's his hobbies and passions and things away from?
I don't do anything. I'm so boring. I just write and then watch Netflix. So I write all day, and then at the evening we watch RuPaul, and that's
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
I really don't, because I think it's because for such a long time writing was my hobby. And so even though it's now become my job, I still think of it like my hobby. Obviously I read a lot. So I always have a couple of books on the go that I'm reading, and I usually will have them here beside my computer, so I'll just pick one up if I'm having a little rest or something. But my whole life is writing and reading. And before COVID came along, I did a lot of touring, so I would do maybe 2 months, 3 months a year on the road. But that's gone for the moment, but I'm sure it will come back. But yeah, I'm quite a boring guy. So you're seeing me at my best. After this, I'm putting on a grey cardigan. Freshly
trimmed. You're very impressive beard, I have to say. I must say.
Well, that's because I can't. I'd love to have a full beard like you, but I just can't manage it at the side. So I've shaped it. I've gone the shape route instead.
Yes, your beard now is with me about 20 years ago. So I've expanded out. Yeah, but so listen, you've been so wonderful. Thank you for your time. Message to everyone, really. Obviously, this is about spreading the joy of Eoin Colfer. We've got a load of his books available to you, so do get in touch, and the details will be on the screen at the end of this event, and has been spread on the emails as well. Tabitha, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tabitha. Well. Great. Nice representation. Excellent.
Thanks.
Fantastic. This is a whole new world we're living in, but I think, and this is a general message, this sort of thing is here to stay. It's very easy to set up, very easy to manage, and we can work it into school schedules as well. So we could probably be doing one a month if you want, with different authors and different...
and the authors are all at home now, so I think you'd be surprised how many authors would love to do this. I'd certainly be recommending it to my friends as soon as I get my grey cardigan on. Actually, when I put on a grey cardigan, I kind of disappear. It's like, oh, come on.
Brilliant. So thank you, Owen. Thank you, Tabitha. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you very soon.
See you all soon.